And we're back. Episode 2 of the Sneaker Strolls Podcast. Obviously me, Braxton, and my co-host Phil. Excited to be back for episode 2. Haven't taken long of a hiatus this time. So only a couple weeks, but we'll be coming at you guys more regularly. But yeah, so today in this episode, we're going to be talking about what makes a sneaker a classic. Obviously, we'll get into some other stuff as well, but this will be predominantly about what makes a classic sneaker, and really, like, is there a way is there a formula that could allow sneaker creators to just kind of replicate this and create a classic sneaker, which we'll kind of get into. I know I've got some questions and some talking points, and I know Phil does as well. So when we're talking about classic sneakers, some that come to mind, and you probably have some you can add to this list as well, but we got Air Max 1s, we got Jordan 1s, 3s, 4s, Air Force 1s, Air Max 90s, Puma Clydes, New Balance 990s, Adidas Stan Smiths. I mean, the list goes on and on. To you, I guess, and we'll kind of talk through it, but to you, at a very high level, what makes a sneaker a classic? If you think about some of those that I mentioned, and then if you want to mention any of your own, what do you think makes a classic sneaker?
So yeah, I mean, you hit it right on the dot with all those shoes, and we could list way more to come in. But yeah, the Jordans that you mentioned right there are obviously some of the first ones that came to mind. Then like Jordan 11 is like probably everybody's favorite Jordan. Not mine, but it's probably majority of people's favorite Jordan if you go out there and ask people what their favorite Jordan is. But when I think of a classic, I guess it's like if it stands the test of time. So when we go back and we look, like you're naming all these silhouettes. So like, all right, we know the Air Force 1, we know the Jordan 1, 2, 3, 4. So then we got to break it down to like, colorways. So then we get into like the colorways and what makes, that shoe a classic. So we know the Air Force 1, cool, it's a classic. Jordan 1's a classic, but what colorways we're going to get into. So like a Bread 1, classic. Chicago 1, classic, because they've come out so many times and every time it's been success. It gives the collector, the sneaker wearer, the feeling that they look for, when being able to get that shoe, no matter what year it comes out. You're even able to go back and grab, you have multiple pairs of Jordan 11s, like years on years, you know, like you have the 2001, you have a 2009 pair. So it's like, that's how you know shoe's a classic, when you're buying the shoe over and over again and you still have the same one. That's the main thing to me. And then like shoes can even become classics, like within like, I don't know, something, the one I was thinking about, like, so say like a Mocha 1, we dropped in 2020, but if it comes out maybe, let's give it like 7 years total from now, that might be a classic shoe just because of what it did, to the game at that time and the time. So when I'm thinking about what makes a classic sneaker, those are like the main things that come to my head. Like you named all the silhouettes, so then you gotta get to like, all right, what colorways and why are these colorways? Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think, that's one thing that I was going to get into as well. Like, yes, there's colorways that could be considered classics, right? So you mentioned a few. You mentioned the Bread 11. We could mention a Chicago 1. We could mention an infrared Air Max 1, right? There, I mean, the list goes on and on. But I guess more so what I was thinking of as far as the aspects that make a sneaker a classic was more so about the silhouette themselves. But we can definitely get into what makes the colorway a classic. And like you said, I mean, the Mocha's a good example that we'll see if that stands the test of time. I mean, I feel like it will, just because of some of these aspects that I think make a sneaker a classic, that I think that plays well with the Mocha 1. And obviously that's a shoe we both like, we both have. And so, yeah, but for me, there's several key aspects and it goes beyond this, but just if you look at the key aspects, for me, it's historical significance. So if you look at the Jordan 1, for example, it's one of the first shoes that really it symbolized Michael Jordan's iconic career and kind of taking not just a basketball shoe that's being worn on the court by a legend and somebody doing it at the highest level, but also a shoe that people wanted to wear off the court. So those kids in the 90s wanted to wear that shoe. And so that historical significance, I think, helps make the Jordan 1, 3, 4. And I mean, you could throw the 2 in there. I don't see that. It's not at the level of a 1, 3, or a 4, but still, people wanted to wear that off the court. They saw him wearing it on the court. So I think there is some historical significance there as well. But next up would be cultural impact. So I mentioned the Adidas Stan Smith, and that, started as the tennis shoe for Stan Smith, but then it became a fashion staple, and just people were wearing it off the court as well. So it kind of bridged that gap between a culturally relevant shoe and a tennis performance shoe. Design innovation would be next. So like the Nike Air Max 1, like we talked about, it was the first shoe to ever have a visible air bubble. And so that, I think, also plays into it. If there is the technological innovation that goes behind it, which I'll kind of talk to more, because there's obviously been flops to that as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean just because something's innovative that it's going to be the next big thing and it's going to be the next classic sneaker. But then just enduring appeal, so meaning that it's aesthetic and it's simple and it stands the test of time. People want to wear it. So like the Air Force One, for example, it's just simple. It stood the test of time. Everybody wants to wear it. It's a versatile. Same with the Stan Smith. And then, I mean, it definitely helps to have some sort of celebrity influencer endorsement. Like you saw, Michael Jordan's fame obviously doesn't hurt any of the Jordan line. Rappers and people who are culturally relevant wearing an Air Force One in a music video, or wearing a Stan Smith, or wearing a Puma Clyde, those things go a long way. And then limited edition releases and collaborations, I think, go a long way. You've seen that with the Air Force One. There's tons of collaborations out there, and every one seems to sell really well. And so I think that also helps, just making that silhouette or those silhouettes kind of a classic. And then lastly, quality and craftsmanship. So we talked about standing the test of time from an aesthetic standpoint, but also wearability. And sure, there's shoes that, we could consider them classics and now they're crumbling, but I wouldn't say that makes it, I don't think that means that it was poor craftsmanship. I mean, a 15-year-old shoe, if you never wore it, of course, it's meant to be worn. And if you do wear it, it is probably still wearable today. If you don't wear it, yeah, of course it's going to crumble, because it's never been worn like it was intended to be. So those are just, to me, a few of the things that really make a classic sneaker. And it's definitely not limited to those things, but just if I look at just stripping it all down, what really makes a classic sneaker to me, or a silhouette to me, and those are the things that I think about. And those were, just given the examples that I did, I think those are the things that really elevate those and make those a classic today.
I think one thing we left out is probably because we're kind of burnt out. We left out dunks, and that resurgence was huge. But we've also talked about that on like other other episodes. But then like thinking about how we just talked about sneakers being a classic, say like we see Nike dunks, they're releasing a lot of dunks that came out like 4 years ago. So right. Is that gonna, like, to you, does that kind of put like so let me give an example. Brazil's, they came out in 2020. I mean, they came out in 2001. I think you have a 2000 or 2001 pair, and they came out in 2020, but now they just released another pair in 2024. So I don't know if it's like waters it down or not. Like, it's going to make me want to go get a 2020. I have a 2020 pair, but it doesn't make me respect the 2024 pair just because it's so newly released. Yeah, I don't know. So I guess I don't know if it's going to water down some of these classics. Like classics, I don't know if Brazil's a classic, but it kind of is. But like if it's going to water them down, just releasing them so close together from releases.
I think it definitely will. And that kind of gets into my next point of, so if, and I'll get back to that for sure, because I think that's a good example to Brazil. But my next question is, so if those aspects are what make a sneaker a classic, which I think we agree upon, maybe a few of those, maybe not all of those, but so if there is those aspects and you keep those in mind as a sneaker brand, if I'm working for Nike and I'm a designer, or I'm working for Adidas, why not just use that formula over and over? So is there actually a formula to creating a classic sneaker? And I think one of the things, what you mentioned, right, is the oversaturation of the market. So I think there's almost like a perfect timeline of like you can't just drop in 2021 a Brazil dunk that we hadn't seen for 20 years,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden drop another one 2 years, 3 years later, and expect it to just take off again. I think there's almost a perfect kind of timeline to, like, maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 7 years, maybe it's 15, I don't know, but just the oversaturation of the releases and the frequency of releases. I think that they might have done themselves a disservice with the Brazil in particular. I think, like, if you look at the Chicago one might be a bad example just because, you know, we got the reimagined. Obviously, that was super hype. That's always going to be hype.
Yep.
Which maybe that makes what I'm saying just absolutely bullshit. But I think with that one, I don't know. Maybe there's different levels to classic sneakers as I talk through this.
Yeah. There is a formula, like you're saying. I agree, there is a formula, but some shoes are that shoe that, like, it doesn't matter. Like, I guess there's, like, levels to, like you're saying, yeah. That shoe's, like, it's not gonna miss, like, Chicago, no matter when we really release it. Unless they change it so bad or something.
Exactly, yeah. So, like, yeah, I mean, like, maybe the Spider-Man, but we talked about that on the last episode, right?
Yeah, Royal, the Royal one, I guess, yeah, we talked about that too, so.
Yes, yeah. That's a good example too, with them releasing, like, a satin and then releasing a regular version and potentially maybe a reimagined version. That one's maybe a better example, because I do agree that there's, now that I talked through it, that there is different levels. Like, I think while we saw the Big Bubble Infrared Air Max 1 not necessarily do as well, and, like, obviously you saw when it first came out last year, we thought, okay, this is definitely going to be on everybody's top 10 list, and then it wasn't. Yeah. And so, you know, we thought that was at the level of maybe a Chicago Jordan 1, but maybe now we see, okay, it wasn't, because that didn't really, sure, it's a good shoe, but it didn't really play as to the level that, like, a reimagined Jordan 1 did, because you saw that come out early on in the year and then stay in people's top 10s throughout the year. So I think there's a few things that make it difficult to just say, yep, there's a formula. One, obviously, being, sure, there's the ultimate classics. I think a Stan Smith, I think a Air Force One, I think a Jordan 1, certain colorways like we were just talking about could be at the top level of, like, those are classics. You can release them anytime in that colorway and people are going to want them. But I think there are a few things to keep in mind when we're talking about why not just use a formula if we know all of these aspects make a shoe a classic. Why not? And so I think a few of those things, when I was thinking through it, would just be, you know, people's taste, the public's taste changes over time. So it's difficult for them to say, okay,
very trendy.
Exactly. Yeah. People want a white and green Stan Smith, right? That's the classic. People want that all the time. And sometimes that changes, right? Sometimes people want a crazy colorway. Sometimes people just do want that, but it's the unpredictability of the public's taste that I think makes it difficult for that formula to just be easy to replicate, and people to just say, hey, I'm going to make a classic shoe and just go for those aspects that make something classic. Another one would be just saturation of the market. They don't know what, if I'm working at Adidas, I don't know what Nike's coming out with, right? They might be on the way to creating a classic sneaker as well, and that one might just be better suited for this timeline in today's sneaker fandom, right? And another one, overemphasis on hype. So people coming out with new shoes, they might just be thinking about the hype. They might not be thinking about longevity, and just more so about, okay, this is hype now, or like dad shoes are hype now, let's do a dad shoe. Another one would just be the balance between innovation and tradition. So we were talking about, you know, Air Max 1 being the first shoe with the visible air bubble. So, you know, that hit at the time. Is that going to stand the test of time? Is that going to ride that balance between innovation and tradition? Obviously it did, but not everything does, which is, we'll definitely get to that later in some of the shoes that maybe brands thought were going to be classics and innovation and things that they thought were going to be next level and stand the test of time that didn't. Another one would just be quality issues, which we've seen with a lot of shoes over the last few years, especially Jordans. Those Jordan 3s, which we talked about in the last episode, come to mind. And then kind of just marketing and distribution decisions. So we talked about the D book, and did Nike kind of fumble that release? Maybe that would have been, and we can kind of talk about that after we get through what makes a sneaker a classic, because I think they kind of brought themselves back from the dead during All-Star Weekend in terms of the D book. But yeah, so how do they market it? Is it the right way? Like the D book, it was huge, it was built up, and then all of a sudden it kind of died down. Does that also play into the formula and the way that you market it, having a good marketing campaign, having a good rollout and all those things? Does that help with creating a classic sneaker? So all those things, I think, make it more and more difficult to just say, okay, here's the formula, let's do it. Because otherwise everybody would, and there would just be nothing but classic sneakers.
Yeah, I didn't even think of the formula. The formula thing is what got me. That's running through my head right now because I didn't even think about the formula of it until you had brought it up. And yeah, I can only think of like one shoe that while you're speaking, Air Max Bacon. I feel like that time when those shoes were coming out, the formula was perfect to release. Like Nike was hitting on the head. I think you got multiple Air Max. What was the see-through one? Two that came out, the Clot.
Oh, the Clot, yeah. Cause
that was a time where like I feel like there's been times where the formula hits, but like now it's like everybody's trying to figure out what's the next big thing. So I feel like right now it's like, I don't know, everybody's everywhere. Everybody wants to do Y2K shoes, mesh shoes. It's just everywhere. But yeah, that's the formula thing just brought me back to thinking about when all those Air Maxes were coming out and they were all a hit. I don't think anybody thought anything wrong of them releasing any of those, especially the Bacon, because that was crazy. The history of it, everything about that. So yeah, the formula has definitely got me thinking a lot, right?
Definitely, yeah. And it is difficult because yeah, if I can just pick out those aspects, and I've just been thinking about it for the last couple of days, and why can't or the thought is, right, why can't Nike just think about this, and why can't Adidas think about this? I know they do, but it's just interesting that we pick out, okay, here's all these classic sneakers or things that we would consider classics, and here's what they all have. And then just thinking about it, we're not obviously making decisions at sneaker brands, but it's interesting to think like, okay, why doesn't everybody just think like this? And why can't they just go out and create the next classic sneaker? Why can't they make the next Jordan 1, Air Force 1, Stan Smith, right? But I think a lot of it is just luck, because at the time, when Adidas was coming out with the Stan Smith, they obviously created a tennis shoe, which now is, you walk around any metropolitan city, you'll see people wearing Stan Smith. Same with Converse, which we haven't even talked about in this episode. Yeah, same with Air Force One. Same with a Puma Clyde, right? They just came out, and Puma Clyde was a basketball shoe, and now you wouldn't even, and Converse too, and you wouldn't even think about wearing those on court now, but they're still classics. And so it's almost like nostalgic. Like I think a lot of what makes those classics, whereas they were made for something else and then they kind of transitioned over, is just that they could do that. It does kind of bridge the gap between, okay, hey, maybe I saw Stan Smith wearing those on a tennis court in the 80s or whatever, and then now that's a shoe that I just wear, or that's a shoe they release and I like because it's nostalgic to me, or a Converse. And, old heads start to say, oh, I used to hoop in those, and now I'm just wearing, so, yeah, I don't know. They probably have no ankles left. But, and those are also the most flat shoe ever. But anyway, yeah, so I think a lot of it is nostalgia as well. But that's kind of my next question. Do you think, and kind of to your point on the Brazils, do you think a shoe needs time to become a classic, or can a shoe become an instant classic?
It's gonna be like supplying, like, okay, so whatever, the 2020 to 2004, it's like, all right, there was probably a decent amount of 2020 pairs. I can imagine they dropped double the amount of pairs in 2024. So it's the supply and demand. Like, Like it could possibly sit now because it just came out 4 years ago. Most of us have pairs, or the people who wanted them, we have got them within this time of 4 years. If we really want the shoe, most of us are gonna get it within a week or two of it dropping. Like, you already know what it is. Like, I can't sleep at night unless I go buy this thing. But
For
most of
sure.
us are gonna get the shoe within a time period that if it comes out in 4 years, I'm probably not gonna double up unless it's like we get back to talking about like a Chicago one or something. So yeah, it does need time. I think a shoe needs quite a bit of time, depending on, especially like a loud colorway as a Brazil. Such a loud colorway. It's not the easiest to just pop on and things like that. So for something like that, I feel like you need, and it came out 20 years ago. Like, give it, like, that was enough respect to drop it in 2020. I think it was like a 20-year anniversary type of thing almost. So yeah, I think it does definitely need, time, man. It definitely needs time.
I agree, and I think, like you were talking about the market saturation, I think that obviously the sneaker market now, as opposed to the early 90s, is way more saturated. They're coming out with so many releases every year. I don't have the exact number, but they probably came out with, 100 plus colorways of a Dunk last year. And
Oh my gosh, yeah.
maybe probably way more than I'm giving them credit for. But
There's probably 5 a week, 5 new colorways a week. So, to be
yeah,
honest.
but so it's just harder, I think, for a single model to then stand out and have that lasting impact. Because if you think about, I guess we could take the Air Force One. I mean, yeah, sure, in the early 90s, they were coming out with a bunch of different colorways and a bunch of collaborations, but it wasn't coming out like it's not like it is now. Every day you get on sneakers, there's another colorway of the shoe that you wanted a week earlier that you maybe didn't hit on. You're like, oh, okay, I could just get this one. That's fine. And maybe it's the
Mhm.
same colorway, maybe it's not. And maybe it's the same silhouette, and maybe it's not. But you might see something else that's coming out. Whereas I think in the early 90s, it wasn't as much that way. Obviously, I started collecting a little bit later than that. Um, but yeah, even if you think back to like when I lived at Fuse and we were collecting, it was not like it is today where you miss out on a shoe and you could just get on the internet the next day and there's another colorway dropping or if you miss out on a Taxi Jordan 12, up next week there's a whatever other colorway coming out of the Jordan
Yeah.
12. You're like, oh, okay, I might as well just grab that one, right? I had to like go sit in a mall in Tippecanoe County Mall and like go get that Jordan Taxi 12 on Saturday morning and probably
Hmm.
get there at like 6 o'clock in the morning. And if I didn't get it, I was just shit out of luck. And
Yep.
like and then when I moved here to St. Louis, it was like, okay, if I didn't get it at one mall, I would go to another mall, but I wasn't like, oh, let me just check online now because they were sold out everywhere. So, and now it's like there's GOAT, there's StockX, and there's all these other pairs dropping. I think it's harder and hard. I think it's becoming harder and harder for shoes to be classics because there's just such a market saturation going on that like they're not even giving it time to like become a classic. So I
Nothing.
think, yeah. So I think one of the big things is like, yeah, just allowing these shoes to like establish their legacy. And it's hard now because they're just coming out with a lot of new things. But I know one of the things you wanted to talk about was this new Drake sneaker, and like
Yes.
for if you take that for example, or can you think of an example of another shoe that we like didn't really love when it first came out, and then it kind of like grew, and maybe we don't even still like it, but it like grew to become a huge shoe. I think about
Damn,
like the
I'm trying to
Union
think.
Jordan
Yeah.
4, maybe like
Yeah. Or
the
that
black
Jordan. Yeah.
version,
Yeah.
um, something like that, where it needs time to like establish its legacy, and even like if you think about yeah. So you already mentioned one actually, the Jordan Mocha 1, right? So if they just come out next year and re-release that shoe, or they wait another year and release it in 2 years, I don't know that they've given it the time that it needs for us to appreciate that colorway. And I know then we're talking about a colorway and not really a silhouette, but
Yeah.
like or look at the Knock the Glide, right? It's not for everybody, but it's still a very good shoe. It draws from the past, so it is nostalgic to some people. But if they just right, they obviously released 2-3 colorways already. If they just keep releasing different colorways, have they given it the time it needs to kind of develop and establish this legacy and then drive demand? Or is it just going to be oversaturated and it's just, oh, next thing, kind of like we were talking about on last week's episode, or last episode with our top 10s, looking at the Travis 1 lows. And I know that's a little bit of a different thing because it's a collab, but still, like, is that something that, and obviously the first Travis 1 high is still held in such high regard, but is that first Travis 1 low just, not going to get the love that it deserves, because it is probably the best one to ever release, except for maybe the Fragment. But now, like, you could just go out and get the triple black one, and now it's like, okay, yeah, sure, I love that other shoe, but it's not a classic to me because there's 20 other colorways that look pretty much the same. It's just a change of the slight color blocking, and now, like, that first one is kind of diluted and it's not as special to me as it would have been if that was the only one. And now, yeah, the demand's going to go up, obviously, but that one could truly get the appreciation that it deserves. And it's not like, oh, that one, I missed out. Okay, 6 months later, I can get this next one.
They're abusing silhouettes. So, as we look at talk about, before we get to the whole new Noctis shoe, we'll talk about Noctis the whole. So, what was the first one called? I don't remember. The Hot Step?
Yeah.
So the Hot Step, the white and the black. Okay, let's rock with the white and black for as long as we can. Every other colorway they released, trash. It's set on the site. They went python skin. They went all black with the yellow. Like, it's just like, what are we doing? Sure, Drake likes it, but is it really, like, doing this thing? And then we go into the Air Force Ones. Those do well, and they sell. They restock and they sell out every time. Now, it's an Air Force One. It's classic. Cool. And then the Glides, which we have, that pair, the first pair we have, that is like, it's a tribute to, one of the Air Flights. Crazy shoe. But then they release like red and green. The white's cool because it's all white. And then we get here to this Noctizoom Drive, which Nike's been releasing like a lot of, like, I'm calling them like Y2K dadish looking shoes.
Yep.
There was an Air Annihilator on here I looked at earlier that was like $75 shoe, but it's such a like a 2000s like Y2K shoe. But this one looks like I'm looking at it right now. It's like a tennis. It almost looks like you're supposed to play tennis in it. It's not the vibe. Like, why can't, like, we're releasing too many, like, we're talking about saturation. He's releasing too many, like, things at once. Like, okay, you got to do the Air Force. Like, you've made 3 new silhouettes. You got to do a classic in Air Force One, and now you're coming out with a brand new silhouette. And the other one's not, like, none of them necessarily done too hot, like, to be honest.
Yeah, and I don't think any of those will be considered classics when it's said and done, or when we look back 10 years from now, or 7 or 5 years from now. And I just wonder if they would have just kept the initial, the Hot Step probably just didn't do it. So maybe if it would have just been that Knock the Glide, the initial one that we have, I think that could have been appreciated more. But I also don't know. Maybe that one or maybe that's just not going to be considered a classic shoe. Sure, it's
like a Nike thing right now, man. It's like Nike. Yeah. I don't know. The Mac Attack, right?
Mm-hmm.
We should have played with the first one. Let the first one ride. We brought it back, that colorway, boom. And then they've released so many bogus colorways of a shoe that should be perfect.
Right.
And yeah, I don't understand. Like, it's just like a Nike thing. It's oversaturating shoes that, like, now it's taken a Mac Attack we were all excited for, and now we got to look at it sit in colorways that's like, why did you even make this? Why even waste the time or make it when you released the one that we needed after waiting all this time to even bring it out? So I feel like it's just a Nike thing in a way. It's just the oversaturation. It's just Nike trying to, I don't know what they're trying to do, but yeah.
It might be, I don't know, because another thing I was thinking about is like, and I mentioned it already, is kind of the innovation which allows shoes to maybe they need time to be appreciated, sure, but then the innovation and the technology behind them will allow them to like go and be these massive classical sneakers, and maybe not to the level of like an Air Force One or a Jordan 1, but like if you think about shoes that have like failed, or tech that's failed and not become those classic sneakers, like if you think about the Nike 360 Air Bubble, or the Air Max 360 or whatever, with the 360 degree air bubble. If you think about Reebok's pump technology, I think they also have to ride the line between innovation and practicality. So like, and I'll talk about like Nike Shox as well. You could consider that a classic shoe, but also a failed technology, because it was obviously created as a running shoe, failed on that sense. But then like now you see it coming back, and now like Supreme's collabed on it, and it's just kind of
fashionable.
It's fashionable now.
Yeah.
But so like, also they also have to take into account not just like the technology behind it. No, that's going to be the next big thing. It's going to be a classic. It also needs to be the timing of it. Also the integration of design. It can't just be aesthetic. It has to be functional as well. But it also can't just be functional and not aesthetic, right? Not everyone liked the way a Shox looked. Not everyone understood the 360 degree air bubble. Not everybody wanted a Reebok pump. And then cultural resonance is also another thing. Like obviously it has to resonate with the culture at the time and be perfectly timed. Like I said, market timing. But I think those are also big things that they have to take into account. So like a couple other ones I had written down were like the Adidas Spring Blade. At the time, that was like something that certain people were interested in. Hasn't really panned out. I haven't seen it since, because obviously they just moved on to the next technology. Nike Shox was one we just discussed, but it was intended for something, and now it's kind of come back as like a cult favorite. And then Under Armour Speedform, Reebok's DMX, and the Adidas 4D. I know they're still coming out with like 4D, and that's kind of in its infancy. But another thing that then you have to think about is like, that's a premium model. Those things are like $300 retail, because they're using this 4D technology. So it's not really like somebody could just go out and buy this. This is like something that is really elevated, and it's not for everybody. Not everybody has access to it. So I don't think that can become a classic sneaker, because that's something that like only people who can afford it could get. And like at the time, the Jordan 1, the Air Force 1's still a very well-priced shoe, affordable shoe.
Yeah, it's gone up $15-$20 since we've,
Dude, it's,
years,
I mean, it's ridiculous now to think about it, when they used to be like $60, but still, like the 4D, $300 for that, and you're just looking at like an Ultra Boost with a 4D midsole. And it's just like, I don't know if that's going to be considered a classic, but then there's also, on the other side of things, there are, and then just to mention a few others that didn't really pan out, Nike Air Pressure, they try to do exactly what Reebok Pump did, Puma Disc, the Adidas Torsion System, which are still using, but didn't really pan out, just trying to like kind of copy off Nike Air Max, the LA Gear Lights, the light up shoes, and then Skechers Shape Ups. Like it's just like interesting to see, like, okay, some old, like the Air Max 1, for example, was the first one to have the visible air, and now it's a classic. But some of these obviously didn't pan out, and I'm sure they expected them to, but it's just interesting to think back, like there is really this perfect timing of, yes, you have to have a new innovation, or maybe you don't. But even the Air Force One had new innovation behind it and was obviously created as a basketball shoe. But yeah, it's just not everything is going to hit at the right time and be intended or be used for the intended purpose. And it kind of has to be able to be aesthetic and be worn off the court, off the whatever, off the field. But still, it needs to like look good, needs to have some functional ability, and there's almost just like a luck involved, like I think we mentioned earlier. So I don't know that there's while we talked about this formula, I don't know that it is necessarily something that you can just say, I'm going to put this out. It's going to be new. It's going to be innovative. It's going to have this new technology. It's going to look dope. People hopefully will want it, but maybe they want it for then and the hype dies down. But then there's just other ones that it's new, it's cool, it's something that like just really resonates with people, and now
Yeezys.
you still see it. Exactly, yeah, Yeezys, and that's another one I want to talk about. Like, is the 350 a classic silhouette? Like, it's relatively new. I mean, obviously it's been around now, but
Yeah, I think so. That first one, that turtle dove, like they released it and people went crazy when they, like the V1, the 350.
yeah. And
I
even
think that's
like,
probably
yeah,
just
like
because
the
it's so
Oxford
new.
Tan, Turtle Dove, all those, like, yeah, I think they're,
Yeah, I think the cultural impact on that one is why that sneaker's a classic. Yeah, you know, like we're saying, we're naming all these reasons, but there's so many reasons that's gonna make a shoe a classic. Like, depending on whoever's opinion of, you know, the likes the shoe or whatever. But yeah, I think that culturally, that has to be a classic shoe. That V1 at least.
I agree. And then I just started to think, like, I looked into kind of technology that then did kind of work and we've seen continue. And then I was trying to think, is there kind of any pattern, and does it make sense, and why these would still be continuing or not have like flopped like some of the others I mentioned? And so some of those that come to mind were Adidas Boost. Obviously we've seen Ultra Boosts 1 through 4, and you know they use Boost soles on Yeezys, and so that technology has just really taken off, and it sounds like that does fit a lot of the aspects to the formula as we were calling it. But I don't know. I mean, it didn't resonate with everyone. It only came out in 2013, so it hasn't. I mean, it's been like 11 years, but
so they brought back the V1. What were the Ultra Boost? The first ones, right?
Yeah, 1.0. Yeah.
So I don't know. They got up to like 4 or so, and they started doing all that 3D and stuff. I feel like the 1 was like the biggest shoe ever at one point. Like that Ultra Boost 1 was insane.
Yeah, and then they re-released it, and
and I thought it didn't do good. It didn't do good. It didn't do good though. I feel like when they re-released it, nobody, like so many other things that came out, Yeezys were in, all this stuff. That Ultra Boost didn't even matter because at the point everybody wanted Yeezys. Like if I'm gonna wear Adidas, I want Yeezys. So the Ultra Boost 1 was like that shoe, but it just didn't stand the test of time because I don't know. I mean, I guess Yeezys could be the only reason why. But that 2013 Ultra Boost was nasty. Like it was crazy. Like, people were literally going to get that shoe. Pairs were probably over $1,000 certain colorways at one point. I'm sure, like crazy.
Dude, the cream one, that one was reselling for like over $1,000, and then they re-released it, and obviously it didn't do as well. But yeah, I agree. I think, I mean, maybe it's just then timing as well as like the timing of other releases, and that gets back to that market saturation and shoes just dropping. Like they might have dropped that re-release of the Ultra Boost 1, but then they were also dropping all these like 1,000 colorways of the Yeezy 350 V2 and re-releasing old Yeezy 350s. Yeah, it was working, but it was like oversaturating it, so people maybe didn't appreciate the re-release of that Ultra Boost 1.0, and they were just like, oh, there's all this available to me now. I'm gonna, like, just because of what time it is and what's going on in the sneaker culture right now, I'm gonna go buy that Yeezy instead. But I do like that shoe, but so maybe that's then not a classic because you would, and maybe the 350 then is like a higher level of classic because at the time where you had both available to you re-releasing, you were like, oh, let me get that 350 Turtle Dove. So
the driving factor of the celebrities, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
it's interesting to think about those things. A couple others that were successful that I was thinking of is, I mean, just overall Nike Air. I don't know if the Vapor Max necessarily would be considered a classic, but obviously they came back, created that innovation with the whole
it's
360. Yeah, it's still around, but it's not.
Yeah.
I don't know if it even necessarily got the attention it deserved, just because I think it wasn't really the most comfortable thing. I know a lot of people still wear it, especially in Europe, and I still have multiple pairs of those I have not worn in years. But yeah, so just Nike Air technology was one. Nike Flyknit, which has been huge for years now. Obviously, that was launched in 2012, and now we've seen it on so many different shoes. We've seen it on Kobe's. We've seen it on basketball shoes. We've seen it on running shoes. We still see it on all of those running shoes. And then also just like kind of, I mean, it rivals kind of the Ultra Boost, but or Adidas. I don't remember what theirs was called. Prime Knit or something. I don't know, but yeah, so Flyknit was a huge one. The On, I know we spoke about On last episode, I think, but like
most
On,
overrated shoe.
Oh man, that's a hot take. I
talked to a few people. I talked to a few people out there wearing. We can talk about that another time, but I just had to shout that out while we're in the middle of it.
But On Cloud Tech, regardless, Asics Gel, Hoka, the kind of oversized midsole. So just a couple things that, and then I was thinking about why did those technologies become classics, or why is that something that we're still seeing today that we saw come out in 2012 or earlier. And so I think it is innovation for sure, but it's also the aesthetic of it, the versatility, which we talked about. You could see something on the court, but also wear it off the court. And then cultural adoption, which is the biggest one. Obviously, people wanting to wear it, like the Yeezy. And then the celebrity aspect of it also helps for sure. But I think all those things kind of go into that formula we kind of talked about. But there's obviously not just a perfect formula. There are nuances that would make something be a classic or not. And I think that it's also sneaker companies making the right decisions with the other products that they're releasing at the time to kind of give that shoe that they've developed to be a classic the love and attention that it needs to become that and gain that hype and be appreciated. Yeah, so it's obviously a difficult question to answer, and there's no perfect formula and perfect response to what makes a sneaker a classic. But I think all these things that we've talked about just kind of outline the important aspects to it, the key factors that go into it, and really just what it's really just kind of being lucky at the time, as well as like making smart decisions for sure, but then also giving it that time, like you said, and just allowing people to appreciate it and not oversaturating the market, and yeah, just getting lucky with what other companies are releasing at the same time, because you might be releasing the next Stan Smith, but Nike might be releasing the next Air Force One, and that one just might resonate with people more right now. Dope. Well, yeah. So I think that kind of does a good job of wrapping up our conversation as far as what makes a sneaker a classic. And I'm interested to see what the next classic sneaker is that any of these brands come out with. Dude, I would agree. I saw Complex, I think, say that shoe has done more for the culture than any other shoe has. And
how many millions of pairs you think are out there? That's the thing, like that are being worn.
I would definitely.
They
agree
were being
with the
bought
statement.
and worn, like reseller, yes, but that's a whole. Yeah, but yeah, that's going to be crazy though to think about like that shoe.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna. Well, it had its heyday and then kind of fell off real quick. So I don't know if I'm going to consider it a classic. I think it's done a lot for just getting people into sneakers. But I'm not sure. We'll see. I guess looking back, we'll see when we maybe do an episode like this, looking back at what sneakers have become classics over the last couple of years. Maybe we do highlight the Panda Dunk as one.
Crazy. That'll be crazy. We got the 2020 pairs, by the way, but so that's why I'm a little biased, because we had probably paid a little extra.
Yeah, I mean, I got them. I paid to get them early. Yeah, it was a bad decision, but it's all right.
Well, one other thing before we get out of here, we've seen quite a few factory flaws with shoes. Usually on our end, it's not as positive as it can be for some other people in getting like a Nike sign upside down on your shoe. Or the tongue we just saw last week, the reimagined bread fours came out, and the tongue, the patch was upside down, which makes it more rare because of that factory flaw. But usually, our factory flaws are the cement on the toes being two different colors, glue stains, things like that. But I know you probably seen there was a shatter backboard pair that had an upside down Nike sign that sold for like, I saw it sold for like $96,000, rumored to sell for $96,000. Then a gold toe that had the same factory flaw. It was rumored to sell around $100,000. And then this 4 just was rumored to sell around $17,000. So like, if you were to get a pair like that factory flaw, what are like, yeah, how are you gonna feel about it? Like, yeah, it's a come up or it's a.
I don't know. I would probably I don't know. I mean, just seeing what it's done, like obviously people want to resell those, and people, for whatever reason, people want to buy those because it's like one of one.
Yeah.
But I would have returned them and been like, yo, what? I don't want this. But I mean, now I guess I would try and capitalize on it. I don't know. I would probably try and resell it if I did get something like that, like upside down Jordan logo or something like that. But it's funny that that's like sought after now, and it used to be like people would be up in arms about that, and like, I mean, you see all those jokes about like, I didn't know Jordan was doing this. It was like Jordan with a booty crack, but like you know, it's like so. But now people would probably like pay $10,000 for that. I don't know. Like,
no, exactly. Yeah, for sure. Especially to be if it's an authentic pair and has a flaw like that. Like,
it's just interesting. I don't know. What would you do if you got a pair with? You're a real stickler for that kind of thing. So
I really am. But that thing is like, so something like that. I mean, I would probably tell you and stuff, but I'd probably just keep it on the low and like say something like, now knowing the impact it has, say something like a year down the line, or say something later like, y'all don't have this pair or something like that. Like Fat Joe, I don't know if you've seen the clip. He was a sneaker con saying, I got the first Gucci Jordan or some BS. Nobody has it. Like something like that. I would just be like, yeah, I got this. You guys probably haven't seen it, but yeah, I've been having this for 2 years now. And yeah, the sign is upside down or something like that. So I'd probably eventually use it as a flex or something just to boost my sneaker status.
I mean, I don't think there's either way you can't go wrong. I mean, you could either resell it right then and just say, hey, this is a factory flaw, but no one else has this, or you can use the boost your sneaker cred. I don't know, but I don't know if there's a right answer. But just the way that people have been like, I don't know who's looking for that though. That's the thing. Like, I guess
it's people with money. If they're spending that much money, it's people like with sneaker stores, kind of like, I don't know, it kind of be like a collectible thing to some people. Because you watch these sneaker shows on YouTube, they got like crazy like pieces. I don't know, it ends up being a piece in a way, kind of too.
Yeah, I just don't know if I would ever, even if I had money like that, I don't know if I would be like, oh, I want the one bread reimagined with an upside down Jordan logo on the tongue.
Yeah,
I would be like, oh, I want to go buy like a Nike mag or something, like, or just
17,000,
20 pairs of bread 4s. Or like reimagined 4s. Like, I don't know. For me, I think I would probably just go back and buy like a mint pair of like OG bread 4s, and I don't think there's anywhere like, or anything that it would bring to my collection to have like an upside down or like the one of one factory flaw bread reimagined 4 that I wouldn't get from being like, oh, I actually have this OG pair of bread 4s and they're in perfect condition, like wearable condition. So I don't know. I wouldn't like try and collect those things. If I came into one, I'd probably try and just capitalize on it and buy something else. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's like a group of people out there that, that's like, that's meant for sure. To like spend that much money on, there's definitely like a group of people. But yeah, I just had to get because that was like one of the things that was big, in sneaker releases, and that was a big release. So, I just had to get your opinion on that for sure.
Yeah, no,
and then
I
gotta ask, I've been thinking all week, man, you got a rotation this week, or what you got on today on foot? We didn't get into it earlier.
Bro, I don't have anything on feet right now, but, I don't know, what did I wore some, those ALD New Balance I sent you a picture of. So those new ALD New Balance, I think it's a 990 V6 maybe. Just came out like 2 weeks ago. And then I was really just wearing actually I wore those a couple of days. I wore the Bread 4 Reimagined a couple times this week. Just try and see how they work out. I wore the Travis Dunk Bapestas, or the Indigo Studio Travis Dunks a couple
I peeped
times.
that last night.
Yeah, so
I think on the story over the weekend I peeped it.
Yeah, it was last night. Yeah, I was wearing those. But yeah, really, I mean, I've just been going to work, so nothing crazy, but just trying, slight flex here and there. But what about you?
I'm trying to think now that I asked you. I know I've been wearing the Buzz Lightyear Croc collab. Just been easy to throw on, so that's probably my main thing right now, just rocking it out. And then I tried to wear the Undefeated Dunks, but yeah, I ended up wearing Pandas because I was just trying to throw something on. And then I guess I've been wearing my neutral 85 low grays around a little bit, beaters. Because we spoke about that too, like, man, do we have any shoes that are really beat? Because when you have so many pairs, I feel like it's impossible. So
those are definitely one. I just went grocery shopping today. I wore some they were like anniversary Air Force Ones, but just some triple white Air Force Ones. But that's another thing I guess we got to discuss. How many times can you wear a pair of Air Force Ones before you got to donate them, toss them, whatever, and get a new pair? I definitely have new pairs. I wasn't wearing socks, I was like, I'll just toss these on. They still look fine, but I've probably worn them 10 times, and I'm like, they're probably getting there.
Yeah, they're cooked. Yeah, I'm gonna do at least 10 plus.
Oh man,
I'll use them as like a donor. Like I cut the Nike signs off the pair before and stuff. So
okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
just use them as like a donor for a project or something like that. Is usually what I'll try to do.
Yeah, I'll probably wear them 5 times. I don't know, and then try and rotate them out.
It's much work. I'm not a big Air Force One guy, to be honest. Now that I think about it, I haven't bought a pair in probably like 3-4 years. To be honest.
Dang.
So I think last pair was a Nike ID'd some, or I bought some all black ones. That was it. So that was 2+ years ago. So yeah, That's the last pair of Air Force Ones I bought on some demon shit. So on some demon stuff. So yeah, I don't even think I'm Air Force. I don't even think I'm Air Force One guy at this point. So
man, it's always just easy to wear. I just I've been wearing those the Drake version, the certified lover boy ones. I didn't put the beads on them. I just wear them regular.
I would have to. If I had that, I would have to put the beads on them if I had them, though. I don't know what you can spell, but I wouldn't spell love or anything like that. So, but I would put the beads on.
Yeah, it's cool. It's just like they're light blue, and it doesn't go with everything, but all white does. I don't know. It's just not really my style, but no, I do like the shoe, and yeah, I think 5's probably where you got to cut it. But I've just been, I don't know, lazy. Just wore those for like the probably 10th, 11th time today. The anniversary pair, but it's all good. But no, that's interesting. You're not an Air Force One guy, but
yeah, I came to that conclusion. It's like, I don't think I need that shoe. I can wear so many other things. I don't even know what I end up wearing. But it's been so cold. I haven't worn a low top really in a while either. So yeah, springtime.
Yeah, it's warming up.
I gotta get my rotation up. I only said I wore 2 pair of shoes this week, so I gotta. Next time we come next week, we gotta act like we own some shoes or something.
I know, for real. Yeah. No, next time I'll just actually note down what I wore, so I can actually have an answer for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna start taking pictures. Take some pictures and shit. Right.
Yeah, we'll have to post them on the Instagram. Speaking of, I know this episode's coming to an end. Make sure if you do like it, subscribe, follow us, leave us a comment if you want. Make sure to follow us on Instagram. We're going to be more active on there. So give us a follow there. Hit us up in the DMs or just tag us. We definitely appreciate that. And obviously it helps with just spreading the word of the podcast to more viewers. I think it's interesting. We give a little bit of a different viewpoint. We've obviously been collecting sneakers for a little bit longer than some other podcasters, but don't necessarily have the experience of like a complex sneakers podcast. So we kind of bridge that gap. But obviously do have the wealth of knowledge that it requires to have a sneaker podcast. So yeah, if you do like our podcast, make sure you follow it, you share it, all that good stuff. But yeah, that I think wraps up episode 2 of I don't know, I think this is season 5, but we've been doing it for a while. So if you like it, shout us out, share it, follow us, rate it, all that good stuff. And make sure to listen to next episode. We'll be back hopefully next week. We'll be back with a new episode. We'll make sure to get this one posted. We're recording this on a Sunday. We'll make sure to get it posted by Monday. And then, and yeah, if you do want to hit us up in the comments, you want us to discuss anything, you want to come on the podcast, hit us up and we'll for sure make that happen for you.